All right, so this is going to be the first video that we do in this kind of setting where you see me talking and then I'm going to switch it back over. What we're going to do is a quick introduction to some trees. We're going to walk around a local park in my neighborhood in Porter, Indiana, and we're going to talk about some of the trees, how to identify them, what to look at. It should help you kickstart your tree work. We're gonna also, I'm gonna be talking a little bit about in another video that's gonna follow this one, how to key out trees. And I'll be using 101 Trees of Indiana. It's a really good book, a lot of nice pictures, published through Indiana University Press. But in that, let's get going. So I just walked into the woods, and one of the first trees that I ran into is this. This is a hackberry, Celtis occidentalis, and we're going to tell you in a second how to tell this apart from other hackberries or Celtis in the Midwest of the United States. But one thing to note is that the bark has these bumps or this quirkiness. See how the bark kind of rolls up into these nice quirky lines, ridges that pop out, and on the smaller ones it's really pronounced. When it gets older, it kind of loses this look a little bit, but this is one distinguishing feature that you can tell right away when you're looking at a hackberry, because it has this quirkiness, as you can see. So when I'm looking at a tree, I'm looking at the bark, and I'm also looking at the leaf arrangement, if it has leaflets, what the leaves look like. And if it has fruit, that's going to be helpful as well. So let's find some leaves for our Celtis and talk about that. All right, so here are the leaves of Celtis occidentalis, and it's going to be different than tenuifolia. Tenuifolia won't be as toothy. It won't be as toothy. One thing that when you look at these leaves, and this is something that, again, you look at the arrangement, and you can see at each node, there's only one leaf. So that's going to be alternately arranged. See that, how it's alternately arranged? One thing about Celtis is that they get a lot of galls, which is cool. Here's a psyllid gall, petiole gall. These are insects that have evolved with this plant. There's at least two galls here. There's this cone gall here, this nipple gall of sorts. Maybe this is but anyway, there's two different galls here that are just on this leaf. So two different insects are using this leaf. So you see a lot of galls. It's going to have a really rough surface, alternate, this long, very toothy for occidentalis again, and then this long pointy tip to the, as you can see here, to the leaf. So you get the quirky bark, you get alternately arranged toothy leaves, a lot of galls, especially later in the season. I mean, look at this galls. How cool is that? And this, it likes floodplains, wetter area. It likes its feet a little more wet, but here it's kind of in a disturbed bottom of a slope. It's I think it's not to get too much into it. It's wood is used in like pallets and cheap furniture or something. The bark of this hackberry, Celtis occidentalis, loving it. Kind of looks like what? Kind of like a pinball track. Yeah, I see it. Actually, we should take a marble sometime and let it go down. So here we have the Thuja occidentalis, the northern white cedar, Thuja occidentalis. And first off, this is planted here. There's only one population that's left in Indiana, in northwest Indiana, in the Coles Bog area within the Indiana Dunes National Park. But you start going up north into Michigan, and there's whole northern red cedar or white cedar forest. But you can see this bark. It's a wonderfully smelling conifer. So this bark is brown, strippy, and remember what we look at is we look at the bark and then we look at the arrangement. So if we can see here the leaves are these flat scale, they're very flat, they're alternately arranged. They smell lovely. It's different in that a lot of our other pines and spruces are going to have needle-like leaves, and this is going to have flat leaves, fan-shaped. The thing that's cool about this tree is in the swamps where it grows naturally, it'll fall over, the plant will fall over, and then it'll grow straight up again, and it's really can be a mess to walk through. Thuja occidentalis, northern white cedar. Here is a tree that you should be able to tell just from the bark. So this is Prunus serotina, and the bark looks like, I've heard burnt potato chips is one thing, but it's going to have this dark, they look like burnt potato chips. You can see here, look at this one. And one thing about Prunus, so it's a black cherry, that's the common name, is black cherry. And one thing about Prunus is that if we can, here's some leaves here on a smaller tree. So the Prunus is going to be alternately arranged leaves, right? So there's, even though that one looks a little bit sub-opposite, it's still alternately arranged. So at one leaf at each node. And then it's going to have, I don't know if you can see it here, maybe I'll post a picture. It's going to have these glands. All Prunus have these glands on the petiole or the leaf stalk. Pull this off to show you. Oftentimes the underside of the leaf has these lines of hair running down this rusty colored hair running down the mid vein. It's going to have the terminal bud is this bud right there. See, it's going to be short and little. On some of our Prunus, that terminal bud actually falls off. It's deciduous, but on Prunus, on black cherry, it stays on. And it's a little bit shorter than, I think it's shorter than Virginiana, which is more of a shrub anyway. But anyway, cool. Prunus serotina, or the black cherry. Oh, and the fruits are little cherries that are in a drooping raceme. And I'll post it right there so you can take a look. Cool. Black cherry. Look at that bark. Look at that bark. Got to be able to tell that bark. Black cherry. Cool. This is a very weedy, common, non-native tree. This is Morus alba. Morus alba, otherwise known as the white mulberry. The white mulberry. We do have a native mulberry, the red mulberry. It's very uncommon for the most part. Let's get closer. First off, oftentimes what you see is in the bark, and it's not really well on this one, but you often see kind of orange hints underneath the ridges. But it often has an orange coloration exposed in the ridges of the bark. Don't see it here. If we see another one that does that, I'll show you that. But one really easy thing to look at is these leaves. These leaves are very lobed. These leaves are very lobed. Look at that. In all different shapes. And some are entire, which means that they don't have any lobes. Entire means that they don't have any lobes, like these. Look at these down here. Almost looks like a tilia. Basswood, which we'll look at again. This is a white mulberry. But again, look at these leaves, how deeply cut they are. How deeply cut they are. And again, the fruits are edible. So, but the leaves are alternate. They're simple. They're coarsely toothed, oftentimes lobed. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. All right, here's a really cool tree that likes these bottomlands. This is Aesculus glabra, otherwise known as the Ohio Buckeye. The Ohio Buckeye. And a couple things to note about this is, again, we're not going into full detail on how to identify all of these. This is just more of a cursory overview to help you identify some local trees, especially around the Chicago region, northern Indiana. That's where we're doing this at. So one thing to note about this, again, we look at arrangements, and what is this? This is oppositely arranged. Each one of these is a leaf. Each one of these is a leaf. Let's pull a leaf out and look at how there's two on each node. We pull it out and you can see, so let's try this again. You pull it off and you can see that there's a leaf scar. See that leaf scar from where we ripped it off on the side there? And so here's but this is one leaf. This is one leaf. So this is what we call palmately compound. Palmately compound. So each one of these is a leaflet. Not a leaf. It's a leaflet. Each one of these is a leaflet. And there's usually 5 leaflets on Ohio Buckeye. On the horse chestnut, which is a sister species, there's oftentimes more. There's a few other differences. I think there's kind of the terminal bud here. Just take a look at this terminal bud here. This terminal bud here is not going to be, I think the Florida Chicago region calls it glutinous, something like that. So it's not going to be that on Ohio Buckeye. It is on horse chestnut. But anyway, and then it's each one of these leaflets is toothed, and palmately is all the leaflets come down into one. I think of it like a palm. See my hand, like a palm. So palmately lobed instead of pinnately lobed. And we'll see a couple tree examples that are pinnately lobed as well. But just remember, opposite leaflets, palmately lobed, you probably have Aesculus, your Buckeyes. In here we have another plant that has opposite leaves. This is one of our maples. This is Acer saccharum, your sugar maple. And the bark, very variable on sugar maples. Some of the old growth sugar maples, like in the Smokies, look very different, the bark wise. A lot of times this young bark is smoother or slightly ridged, but it's variable. So really what you're looking at is, first off, these leaves. This is not compound like we saw in the Buckeye. They're oppositely arranged. So 2 leaves at each node. Look at that, just like a Buckeye, but not compound, right? So it's opposite, not alternate. The leaves, so the fruit are going to be winged. You know, your whirlybirds or your helicopters that you dropped when you were a kid, oftentimes come from maples, the samaras, samaras. Anyway, a sugar maple is gonna not have, and we did a whole video on maples on the leaves. Check that out sometime. But you can see in the sinuses here, there's no teeth in the sinuses. No teeth in the sinuses. And that's one way you can distinguish this from red maples and silver maples. Anyway, sugar maple, cool. But just remember, maples are opposite. Most of our other trees are not. So as we're walking here, we're kind of getting down by the river, and I ran into this tree. This is a cool tree. So this is Carya cordiformis, one of the hickories. I don't remember common names well, but Carya cordiformis. So one of the hickories. In this, each one, it's alternately arranged. It's alternately arranged. Look at that gall. I don't even know what that is. Just pulled this off. This is one leaf. Just remember, if you pull one of these leaflets off, it's not going to have that leaf scar on the branch. That's one way you can know that this is all one big leaf, and these are leaflets. Okay, these are toothed. They're toothed. Each leaf is alternately arranged. Leaflets are opposite. Easiest things to see when identifying this is look at this. So a lot of these terminal buds will have scales covering them. And we'll maybe see a shagbark hickory and kind of see what that looks like, Carya ovata. But this is Carya cordiformis. And look at how this is a naked, it's a terminal leaf bud with no scales. And it's often this golden yellowish color. So if you see this naked golden yellowish color, alternately arranged, compound, toothed, pinnately compound is ladder-like. So see how it's ladder, not like a palm, like a hand, but pinnately is ladder-like rather than palmately compound like we saw in the Buckeye. So this is palmately compound. A tree that gets a lot of hate, and I love it. This is Populus deltoides, Populus deltoides, also known as the Cottonwood. Look how straight, look how deep. First off, look, I just said, you know, one thing to start looking at is bark. So I haven't even looked up yet, but look at how chunky and long strips this bark is. This is fast growing, likes its feet wet, and then look how straight it grows. Look at that. What a gorgeous tree. They don't live too long, so people don't like them because they grow fast, they're big, and then they die. Great habitat. Let's find some leaves. They're all on the ground, so we're not looking up high. We're not looking up too high. All right, so here's a leaf of Populus deltoides. It's going to have this compressed, flat leaf stalk. So it's not round, it feels flat, as you can maybe see here. It oftentimes will have little glands right at the base here of where the leaf and the leaf stalk come in. And it also is coarsely toothed. Looks similar to Grandidentata. Grandidentata will have longer teeth, more pronounced teeth, even though these are pretty pronounced. And if we look down here, you can see the base is usually kind of flat to somewhat cordate. But yeah, look at all these leaves down here. And it's going to have a giant, big, sticky terminal bud. And then the cottonwood, you know, it gets its name because its fruit are like cotton that's raining down on you. Another tree that often grows in riverbank sides. This is Acer negundo, otherwise known as Boxelder. And this is going to also have, because it's a maple, an Acer, it's going to have opposite leaves. But what's one thing you note about this relative to the other maples is that it's going to have, each one of these is a leaf, and these are 3 leaflets. Each one of these is a leaflet. So it's got a compound leaf. It's a compound leaf. It's opposite. So it's a small tree here. The new growth here will be green, sometimes purple, but glaucous, which is this waxy coating on it. In the winter, this is one of my favorite winter buds. It looks very regal with a kind of purplish, glaucous green new growth. But again, this is opposite. This almost looks like poison ivy. Poison ivy will have alternate leaves and not opposite leaves. And I'll show you here in a second when we find some poison ivy. It's all over the place. Here is Juglans nigra, the black walnut. Very common in our bottomlands. Ironically, it's facultative up, which means that it's supposed to occur mostly in uplands, but I find it, and especially in the northern Indiana, southern Michigan bottomlands quite frequently. But it's going to have this kind of like looks almost like a cottonwood bark. You know, it's going to have longer furrows, deeply ridged. It's usually a pretty straight tree as well. But then look at the leaves. The leaves are pinnately compound. Pinnately compound. Do you see that? They're pinnately compound. And it gives it this nice filtered shade. Isn't that beautiful? Let's see if we can see any smaller ones so we can grab them and take a closer look. So here, note, each one of these is a leaf. Look how long that leaf is with many, many leaflets. This one has 2 fell, but it would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 leaflets on that one. They are toothed. Take a look there. It's toothed. Unlike sometimes this is confused for Elianthus altissima, the tree of heaven, but that's not going to be toothed. It may have kind of a thumb, but it's not going to be toothed. And then look at this. It's alternately arranged. Each one of these leaves, this is one leaf, remember, and it's alternately arranged, not opposite like the Buckeye. It's going to have this kind of goofy, hairy auxiliary buds here, and then terminal, kind of the stout, hairy terminal bud. The stout, hairy terminal bud. I love the smell of these leaves in the fruit. I think some people don't like it. I like the smell a lot. Not to mention, here's some poison ivy we're going to look at in a second. When we're looking at, this is a different Juglans nigra black walnut. But one thing that talks about in 101 trees is that it's got a very chocolatey inner bark and it's kind of a chocolatey bark. And it's very blocky. It's a very blocky, just like a Populus, deltoides, your Cottonwood is very blocky. But let's take a look at this poison ivy here. We did a video some time ago on poison ivy, how to tell it apart in the winter. I still need to do a video on how to tell it apart normally. But one thing to note is look at each one of these. This is a leaf. This whole thing's a leaf with 3 leaflets, right? This is poison ivy, Toxicodendron, toxic tree, literally dendron, dendronology tree, Toxicodendron. But you can see here that each one of these is alternately arranged, not oppositely arranged. So Mateo just grabbed a fruit from a black walnut and just wants to show you and quickly tell you about the fruit.
So this is a black walnut. It's a nut, and some larvas live inside of it. Once I'm done explaining it, I'm going to show you. It's a nut. It's round, and it normally comes in a pear when it grows.
And then also you can see that soft husk too around it. And there's often larvae when you open it up. I don't know what species eats it, but there's a larva that you oftentimes, when you break it up, you can see the larva inside. You got some in there?
Yep, I got one
and
right there.
Look at that. I'm only going to talk about this, but walking by, and this is just kind of a walk and talk video. This is Catalpa speciosa, your southern Catalpa. I think that's what it's called. I forget the northern Catalpa or southern Catalpa, but Catalpa speciosa. This is not native. It's native to the southern Indiana. Not native up here. It gets weedy. It escapes from people planting it. But it's got these big heart-shaped leaves, toothless, with a little bit of a tapering tip. Bignoides is going to have a long tapering tip. But you can see here how big these leaves are. Huge leaves. It's got these bean-like. It's not a legume because it's not in the Fabaceae, but it's going to have these long bean-like fruits that come down. A very brittle, breakable tree. Look at that. Just breaks, right? You know, just breaks it. But anyway, Catalpa speciosa. I forgot to mention, take a look here. Alternate leaves, even though it looks close, maybe sub-opposite, it's still alternately arranged, right? Alternate leaves. But they also, they form kind of these sub-opposite clusters, especially around the tip. So let's take a look here. See, they're alternate, but like I said, sub-opposite, so almost opposite in these clusters. See, look at how they kind of 3 here, up here as well. And that's something that's more indicative of the Catalpa. And when the leaves fall off and you're looking at winter buds, maybe we'll do a video on winter buds, you can also see that whirl of leaf scars on the side. So here is a bigger Catalpa. It's going to have fissured, scaly bark going up again. You get these big heart-shaped leaves. Toothless. And then across the river here, let's take a look here and see if we can see it, if the sun's not going to blind us. I don't know if you can actually see that, but there's pawpaws, Asimina triloba, big snoopy-eared trees across the way. All the way along there, along the river here is pawpaws. So I can't believe I didn't notice this when I was talking about this cottonwood here. This is a Morus alba again. Remember I talked about kind of that orangish color, that inner bark is kind of orangish. You can kind of see what I'm talking about there. I keep wanting to focus on my finger instead, but you can take a look at that. This is a big white mulberry Morus alba there. We didn't run into any oaks because again, we're in more of a successional bottomland. But hopefully this video helps you just get started looking at trees, looking at the bark. And then in the next video here, we're going to actually take some of these, we're going to take this book and we're going to run through some keys just to get you familiar with looking at a key, what to do with it, and so forth. So again, you know, I hope you had fun on the little walk and learned something. All right, cheers.